introduce yourself?
My name's Sarah Fordyce, and I'm a painter and a drawer, and I've been doing that solidly. Like, had a solid studio practice for the last 4 or 5 years in Brunswick. Yeah, that's me.
When did you start?
Well, I've been drawing since I was really young.
Yeah.
I learnt to draw, like I could draw a lion really well before I could read or spell. It was what I was doing for most of my childhood. And then it dropped off a bit when I was a teenager, and then got back into it when I did a Bachelor of Fine Art at Curtin Uni, and I graduated from that in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then moved to Melbourne for a Master's in Fine Art in 2018, and did 1 semester of that, and then had to pull out because of mental health stuff. But then that really fired me up to get my own studio practice and, get a studio and start working full time.
Yeah, what drove the decision to go to art school? So was there a point, was it a gradual kind of thing where you I might be an artist, or I mean, what triggered the decision to actually go to art school?
Well, originally I just wanted to do a bit more drawing in my life, so I just started doing a couple drawing courses, and then I enjoyed it so much, and I really liked learning about other artists and learning sort of what materials mean and what processes mean, and it kind of just really opened up the world to me. And I kept doing more and more courses, and then suddenly I'd graduated. Yeah, so I kind of fell into it. But the longer I did it, the more I got this confidence that this is what I wanted to do. Yeah. But it was kind of like a returning to that childhood self in a way of like drawing being my language and something that I could use to express things that I couldn't express in other ways.
Yeah. So what are you trying to express?
That's the question. Yeah, a lot of my work, I think, like I'm painting and I'm drawing, and I'm really drawn to darkness as a theme. When I came to Melbourne and I had anxiety, I found that the only moment when I experienced peace was when I was walking home from the tram stop at nighttime. And it was sort of like the falling darkness made my inner self just sort of quieten down. And I think there's this real truthfulness to darkness, because when you close your eyes, it's like the inside and the outside become the same color. And there's almost like a flow between the self and the space around you. So I got really interested in that kind of idea. And there's something inexpressible about darkness. This quote that I love by this Austrian philosopher, he's called Ludwig Wittgenstein, and he says, the inexpressible is expressed. The inexpressible is contained inexpressibly within the expressed. So it's kind of a bit of a tongue twister, but I think what he's trying to say is you sort of have to express something. You're making something, and it's about this thing that you can't really nail down, but in the act of trying to express it, then you touch upon something.
I think people are going to have to replay that.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to write it down or read it somewhere a few times.
Yeah. I think in darkness there's this idea of mystery, and I'm really interested in the mystery of the world. I think since the Enlightenment we've sort of had this idea that we know a lot of things and science can explain a lot of things. But there's so much that we don't know and we can't understand. Even just the idea of like the soil beneath our feet, there's so much we don't know about soil. There's so much we don't know about the deep sea. And I'm really excited by that kind of stuff. And when I'm walking around at nighttime, I'm often in like familiar places like my kitchen or my garden or, the streets of my suburb. And when the sun goes down, I feel like this sense of the familiar everyday shifts a little bit. And suddenly I'm faced with a bit more of the unknown. And yeah, so in my work, I'm just really interested in that, like painting or drawing things that seem familiar, but then darkness has sort of rendered a bit other to me, and I get to meet them again or explore them again for the first time almost.
You mentioned a couple of times mental health, anxiety and things like that. I think for me as well, and a lot of other artists I've met, it seems to be a common theme of using art as a way to deal with kind of mental anguish and things like that. do you think that is primarily what drives your desire to create? Like, if you didn't have anxiety, would you even paint?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the anxiety, like back then, it made me look for things that gave me peace. It made me, like, it drew me into spaces where I did feel peace, because around there was just so much chaos. And so it does become part of the artwork in that sense, in that it kind of forces me to cling to things that are really precious, or, yeah, really kind of give me that sense of falling peace.
Yeah, the reason I ask is I'm a fan of David Lynch. And I remember reading an article or an interview, I can't remember exactly what it was, but he went and saw a psychologist, and the psychologist wanted to put him on, I think it was antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication, and he asked the doctor, is it possible that this will change my creativity? And the doctor said possibly yes, and so he refused them.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Because he didn't want that obviously that creativity was very important to him, so it's like he wanted to keep himself with whatever problems he may have.
Sure.
To keep his creativity. And that's why I asked if you think that not having the issues you have would impact your artwork, or...
Yeah, it's a tricky line, I think, because a lot of people need medication, and that's a great gift that we have. But yeah, I think there is something there maybe about going into the darkness or going into that uncertain space where things feel like not in your control, and seeing what you can find there. And I think every day in the studio, that's sort of what I'm facing a little bit. I think the best paintings for me happen when I don't really know what I'm doing. It's sort of like on the edge of things that you can control and things that are beyond your control. If you can keep shifting that edge in your creative practice, for me, that's where I think the best work comes out for me.
Yeah. So do you paint and draw from memory, imagination, real scenes? What do you do there?
It sort of often starts with just looking. So I'm always often trying to, just keep my eyes open and spend a lot of time, looking at certain things, or just trying to notice moments when I feel like the texture of existence is kind of shifting a bit, or I do feel that different sense of reality, or that different sense of the familiar becoming strange. So the first step is sort of just paying attention. And then I'll often take a lot of photos, and then I'll collate them into special albums on my phone that kind of represent like a certain feeling. And then I'll just draw them. And so I have my visual diary. I've got a lot of drawings.
Well, show us a couple.
Yeah. So some here, some recent stuff. I really like pencil drawings because the pencil almost has like a lead, like the lead pencil has this sort of velvety texture. And then it kind of simplifies a scene for me, and brings out those shadows. That's like an early morning kitchen with the kettle, when I was not feeling so well, and there was something about getting up really early, and the grey darkness was very sort of soothing and grounding for me. Yeah, so definitely a lot of drawings, and often I'll draw something quite a few times. And in my drawing, I'm using the photo just as like a springboard, and I'm also bringing in memory and imagination, and I'm trying to let the material take over a little bit. And so it's not so much about this perfect image or something. It's about, what can this process show me about this particular feeling, and what new things will come out of it. And then I'll do a lot of gouache paintings, like little gouache studies. And gouache is an incredible medium because it's so slippery and it moves around with the water. And so like colours will blend together, and there's that lack of control again where the medium will take over your hand, because that can be a bit fussy and tight, and the medium just takes over. It does its own thing. And then I feel like I'm learning from these, drawings and studies and then bringing new things to me. And then I will do often a big oil painting. And it's sort of based on all those different experiences, the looking, the memory, the drawings.
And obviously all of them contain that
Yeah.
darkness.
Yeah.
What is it about darkness? Like, it appeals to a lot of artists. I mean, my own photography,
Yeah.
like, I, as you know, you've seen some of my photos, I tend to print them quite dark, and I like that mystery too. And I can't figure out what it is.
Yeah, for me it contains an opening. So I think when the sun's out, we can kind of see everything. Things are like, everything's in their place, and there's this sense of like a locking down. But when the sun goes down, I feel an opening up. So because I can't see things so clearly in the shadows of like a bush in your garden or something, you might see unfamiliar shapes, or your imagination sort of wakes up a bit at nighttime as well. Like you'll have the experience of, getting up at nighttime, going to the bathroom, and you kind of see things in the darkness in the corners. I think that's kind of incredible. I think darkness works with imagination really well, and with possibility and openness, and all those things I think are great for art.
Yeah, I agree. I love the mystery, and
Yeah.
so some of those drawings there, they're kind of, I don't know if this is the right word, but they're a bit like cinematic. So it's like some of those interior scenes,
Yeah.
I can kind of picture them as photographs or scenes in a film sort of thing. Is that? Do you take any inspiration from other kind of genres of art, like filmmaking, photography, things like that? Is there any of that in there?
Yeah, I think film is a little bit a part of it. Definitely the written word is a big part of what I do as well, as an inspiration. I watched a Tarkovsky movie recently, and that had some had some quite dark scenes as well. It was called The Mirror. But it also, and I think this is another thing about darkness, is that it makes colours feel a bit more saturated. Like a colour against like a darker background, you'll see the colour even more intensely. That's often something that comes into my work. Yeah. But yeah, definitely poetry is a big part of my practice. It's kind of...
Contemporary? Or?
Yeah, a bit of a mix. One of my favourites is Rilke. So he's got some actually beautiful poems about darkness. Talks about sort of the webs and, the roots sinking deeper and deeper into something. And I think the experience of reading a poem is a bit like how it feels to make a painting, where you don't really know which way it's going to go, and you just sort of have to sit in that unknown experience and see if it reveals itself to you. Often you'll have the experience of reading a poem and not understanding it. But I think if you can, but I think with poetry, if you can let go of trying to understand it and just let it sort of happen to you, then it will reveal itself. And painting is a bit like that too, sort of when you can let go of the control and let the painting, go where it needs to. Yeah.
I have that experience. I like reading poetry, but a lot of the times I'm like, I don't get what's going on.
Sure, yeah.
And maybe I have to look at it more like a painting.
Yeah.
Like I'm looking at the written word as if it were a painting. I'll try that. I've got a few poetry books here, so I'll give that a go. You've mentioned kind of nature.
Yeah.
You've mentioned roots and things like that. You mentioned the water earlier. Nature's obviously a theme in your work. I've seen your work, but also there's a lot of urban scenery. What is there? Is that a conscious choice you've made to kind of go for that contrast of kind of man-made urban scenes and then contrast that with the natural world?
It doesn't feel like a conscious choice. I think it's just something that I've always done. The first series that I painted when I was at uni was about the experience of seeing a landscape from a car, like on long journeys across Australia, and you get a glimpse of a landscape out the window. So even that has that sort of the human-made car and then the landscape. But I think I like what I like about seeing them together is that's my familiar everyday experience. So that's what always I'm in. But also I see humans as being part of nature, and then the sort of the interconnectedness of those things really interests me. So like I've done a lot of work, like a couple of my painting series have been about gardens, and that's a really interesting combination of, you know, the control of trying to make something within a certain square of a backyard, and then the wildness of nature and the way that you can't really control how it's going to go. You know, you can't control the weather. You don't really know what's happening in the dirt a lot of the time.
The state of my backyard is proof of that. You just saw
Yep.
it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's sort of a site where you see, you know, our desire to sort of take over things, but then the garden sort of takes over a bit back. And that's a really nice relationship, the give and take. Yeah, and then seeing also the way that, you know, we're part of that cycle of sort of life and death and, things disintegrating and then regrowing.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and have a guess. Is there a religious element to your work? It just from the way you said, especially early on in our chat, is it some of that in there?
Yeah, it's a perceptive.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, that's fine. It's a perceptive question. Definitely, there was a strong religious background to my childhood and my early 20s, which has shifted now for me a little. But I definitely am very interested in that sense of the immaterial, you know, the things sort of unseen. I think those are all questions that religion is trying to ask. So it's definitely part of things. Yeah.
It's interesting because I haven't met many people who take that approach to their art making. A lot of the art making I see is very, I guess, politically driven, which is good, but I get a little bit over it, to be honest. And I like seeing kind of work like yours that comes from a different place. And maybe it's because it's more like the work I like to make. So I guess if I was a painter, I'd like to paint work like yours.
Yeah, I guess in my work I'm just trying to be authentic, so to my everyday experience and you know, to my experience of what it's like to live in the world. And I think religion can be political. I think gardening could be political. I think, you know, walking around, you know, there's so many things that, do relate to our wider experience of being humans in the world. And I'm interested in all that sort of integration, you know, the political with the personal is interesting to me. But I'm also not trying to lock myself down into like a certain way.
So I guess it doesn't come across like you're trying to make a statement.
No.
They're personal statements. But, nothing broader than that. So.
And some people will relate to them maybe because they have a similar experience, and then other people won't. But I think also people will take what they need from it as well, or what they see. And I don't really have any control over how people read my work. And I want it to be open.
I mean, that's the joy of art, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
It can be interpreted in any way.
Yep.
I guess that leads. What's your opinion on art today in general? Like, what kind of art are you looking at and are you liking? Like in a local sense, like in Melbourne, Australia, or even internationally. What do you think of it?
I think it's great. I think there's a lot out there, and I think with social media and the internet, we just get bombarded with so many different types of art. I can find that pretty overwhelming sometimes, so I have to limit how much I take in. I love going to a gallery and seeing a work in person. I think there's some amazing artists just in Melbourne, like Seth Birchall is a favourite of mine. He does sort of those romantic, sublime, sort of very loose paintings of nature and beautiful kind of feeling from his work. Another painter I love is Lottie Consalvo. I think she's based in Newcastle. just the way that she uses her paintings are so different to mine, but just this economy of gesture that she has, and often looking at interesting themes that I really connect with, like the psychological landscape and the sublime. And then overseas, so many. I mean, Maya Rosnick, she's a artist in America, in New Mexico. I love a lot of her work, and I love what she has to say about painting. She talks about how if we consider that our hands might have a different intelligence to our brains, maybe we'll be able to see something new in our own work. And I love...
What does that mean?
Yeah, it's a crazy idea, but it's sort of, a lot of... like there's a lot of thinking these days about how the brain is in the gut, and so many of our emotions come from, down here, not from here. And our emotions sort of live in our bodies, not in our brains. So I think it's a bit part of that, like thinking that, maybe your hands know better than your head. Yeah, and if you just let them do what they do, or you let them, you surrender some control to them, say in a painting, maybe, what kind of work that would open up for you. Yeah, I really love that idea.
Wow, that's interesting. You're going to have to send me these artists, because I can't, I can look back on the video, but then I have to listen to my own voice, so I'll just listen to me. Yeah, there's some amazing, I think, figurative artists out there at the moment too. There's been a real resurge in figurative painting, which is exciting to me. I love abstract painting, but I've always leaned more towards figuration in my own work. And I see figuration as sort of forming like a scaffold. So the image becomes the scaffold, or like the structure of the work. But then it's like a container for feelings. And so because we have this image, this structure, the feelings can kind of flow through, and the freedom can like walk around the house, as it were, or something. So I like having that scaffold there. I think it forms an interesting sort of structure. Yeah, like a way in. Yeah. Which I guess you don't get with abstraction. Yeah, it can be just for me. That's how I see my work, and how I understand the question of figuration. And the image. Do you see yourself kind of throughout your whole career staying consistent with what you're doing now, or can you see yourself kind of moving in maybe a slightly different direction? I hope I keep moving. Yeah, I think every time I make a new body of work, I sort of have this little death inside me where I'm rejecting, just in my own little ways, the things that I've done before, and needing to almost start again and keep starting again. And I think some of my favourite artists have really been aware of that, and that need to, and you can't control it, but just to keep making new things and to be open to change. And how important a part did studying at an art school play in your career and your style? Yeah, I mean, I had the experience of my bachelor was really great. I really enjoyed learning about so many different artists that I wouldn't have come across before. I think just that exposure to art theory and art history is invaluable. I found that really helpful. And just things like, how to make a canvas, and how to work with your materials, how to understand colour, like a tube of paint, which pigments does it even have in it? Some of them are sort of a mix of lots of different pigments, and that sort of way of, you can learn that from anywhere probably, but it's really helpful with art school, I think, doing that in a structured kind of way. I found it helpful. But then later on, I think I needed to get away from needing to sort of justify myself as an artist. And so leaving my master's was really helpful for me, just being like, well, if I'm going to do this, the most important thing is actually my studio practice. And that's the thing I need to keep feeding, and just showing up every single day and trusting that the work that I put in will show me where to go. And you can't get away from that. No matter how many degrees you have, I think if you're an artist, the most important thing is to keep creating and keep practicing. So anything you can do that will keep feeding that is where you want to go. But of course you will have downtime where you don't make any work. How do you deal with that?
I find it a bit tricky sometimes. Like if I'm going away on holiday or something, you know, I might plan to do some drawings or whatever. It can be a tricky relationship with sort of rest and making.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, some of my like most interesting ideas have come from rest, or when I'm not like actively trying to make work, but I'm, you know, just sort of existing, and then an idea will come or a certain scene will hit me, and then that will take me on a totally new direction in my actual work.
So these downtimes are where like you do nothing.
Yeah,
and
maybe walking or reading,
and that's
you know?
when the ideas come, and I found that happens as well.
Yeah.
I won't touch a camera for like months
Right.
sometimes, and all of a sudden I'll just pick up the camera and walk out, and then you know start shooting, and a project appears before me, and I have no idea how that works, but downtime does play a part in it, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's that idea, coming back to it again, of not being in, recognizing that you're not really in control. And so I guess you can work and work and work and hope something happens and have a lot of intensity around that. Or you can just wait for an idea, or wait for something to happen to you, or wait for the work to come to you. And it's a tricky balance. I think going to the studio and having that consistent practice is so important. But I also think rest is really important. And I think really your whole life is going to be about, art's going to come into all of your life, you know, no matter what you're doing. And I think it will surprise you what things are art. Like my latest series, I've become really interested in hands, and sort of like, you know, Alice Neal's paintings. You look at the hands in those, and they're so expressive. They contain so much emotion, and just looking at people's hands when they're cooking or preparing something can be quite beautiful. And there's sort of like a tenderness and an intimacy in someone's hands. But that's just cooking. You know, it's such an everyday activity, and I think it can hold a lot of emotion for me.
Well, it's something we can all relate to as well.
Yeah.
Most of us have hands, and we use them, and they're our tools, basically. So we're opposable thumbs, you know, the reasons we evolved into what we are, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a departure from your earlier work as well, like as in with the darkness and all that. Do you still keep that that play on darkness in these works with the hands?
I think it's still coming in. Like I have a drawing here, like a recent drawing, because I mean a lot of it's like dinner time kind of stuff, and you have low light, like this one, say for example. There's someone's hand coming in and a bit of a body, and then some, I think it's eggplant, and even then we have this darkness in the background falling, and you can't quite see everything, so there's that thing of things being a bit veiled, and this light coming in that sort of shifts the whole mood of the piece. I
love that.
So it's still, I think it's still winding its way in. I still love to paint darkness, and I still love paintings that have that, and it's still coming in.
You've had a lot of exhibitions. You're doing well in your career. I know that because I follow your career on Instagram and whatnot. Is there something I guess you could say to help out like someone who's starting out as an artist, like a student at the moment? On how to find their voice or get exhibited, or what's a path that one could take, you know, kind of something generic. I think people watching this would be interested in that. It's very murky. There's so many clarity.
It is murky. And I still feel like in the murk, honestly.
Well, that's surprising to give.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm still, you know, trying to make my way in the art world, and having, you know, constant rejections and that kind of thing. So maybe I can have a little bit of advice, but not much. But I think the most important thing is to not worry about success. There's a lovely Georgia O'Keeffe quote. She was a wonderful sort of American painter. And she says that success isn't important, it doesn't really matter. And she says the most important thing is to keep making your unknowns known and to keep the unknown always before you. So I think, instead of worrying about all the noise of what's going on out there in the art world, or, whether you're succeeding or failing, just keep coming back to your core of why you want to make work. And I think that will be a daily journey, honestly. It's pretty easy to get distracted from that. But keep returning to that, keep returning to your inner work, and do everything you can to feed that. So whether it's reading certain things or talking to certain people, having sort of alone time, or engaging in, politics or activism or whatever it is that feeds that, keep doing that. And then, keep that flame alive and just keep making that work that is connected to what you're feeling on the inside. So that's sort of like sustaining a practice.
Yeah.
Try and get a studio space, whether that's, a little corner of your bedroom or your kitchen or an actual rented space. Go to exhibitions and try to meet other artists, though that can be really, really scary. And then just apply for things. Like there's a lot of art prizes you can apply for in Australia. You will probably get rejected from all of them.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah, but like sort of try and develop a thick skin to that and realise that rejections aren't a reason to stop making your work if you believe in it. You have to really believe in it. And then just try and get into galleries that you can get into. Like you have a great gallery. Talk to David. Or we've got Ellie, like the neighbour Elnaz. Her gallery is great as well. There's usually a few smaller galleries that you can start with. And open calls and things like that are really good as well. Yeah. So, but none of that's going to happen unless you keep feeding that inner work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does success look like to you? How do you, for yourself?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a big question.
I can't answer that question myself, to be honest. So maybe you can help me.
I think it's tempting to say something like, having this gallery represent me, or something like that, or selling paintings for this much money. But I think what it really would be for me is making work that connects to what I want to keep making. Making work that connects to that feeling that I get through life. That unknown, mysterious feeling. If I can, keep coming back to that, that would be successful for me. And if I keep doing it until I'm old, that would be a successful artistic life for me. Regardless of what happens with people like my work or don't. That's sort of like a side thing. It helps, selling work. It helps keep you going. If you're not selling much work, I think just have a little side job so that you can keep sustaining your practice if you need to. There's no shame in that. Just making work that I believe in and that is, I believe, to be saying something. Yeah.
One more question. I won't torture you anymore. Process or results? Like, what's more important to you? Were they of equal importance?
Yeah. Okay. So the process or the final.
Or the final, result.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think they're both really important to me. Yeah. I mean, it also feels connected as well. I guess the process ends when you stop working on it. And then it sort of gains like a life beyond you, I think. And so I see the processes as doing everything you can to give the work a life that doesn't need you anymore, so that it's sort of self-sustaining. But the process is sort of everything that's gone into making it, which is what the work is about as well. I guess
the reason I ask is because I guess like if you could snap your fingers and just
right,
your painting just appears. I mean, we live in a culture now of instant gratification. So people like you, myself, and other artists who kind of make art that takes time and effort.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it goes against what our whole world is about now. Everything's now.
Mm.
And I think about it a lot. Like, what is how important is the process? Like we spoke earlier, I enjoy the process to the point where I'll make something, but sometimes I won't show anyone for like a year because I just put it away and forget about it because I enjoyed the process. And I actually don't think I'd like to snap my fingers and have something appear finished. I mean, I could photograph my photos with a digital camera, do it on a computer, you know, fix it up on a computer, and it's done like that very very same day that I choose to shoot on film and print it in a dark room. And I guess if you could snap your fingers and have your painting finished, would you?
No.
No?
No, definitely not. Yeah, that's a really interesting question. But no, I think for my work, the whole meaning of it comes out of the process, which is sort of like those layers of understanding and layers of seeing, and, you know, letting things come out of the process of like drawing a little sketch that I wouldn't have known before, and me feeling like a bit of a discoverer, like a bit of an explorer, and not really knowing where it's going. And that's all what goes into the final work. And so without that process, the work wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't mean what it means. Yeah.
The process. Yeah, I agree. The process gives the work meaning.
Yeah, and it gives my life meaning as well.
Yeah.
This sort of track of, you know, finding what I want to see or looking for what I want to see. It all starts there. And if I didn't have that, and if I was just, creating final images, that wouldn't be satisfying for me.
Thank you, Sarah.
Oh, thank you.
I told you it was the last question. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yep.
Thank you for coming along.
Yeah, thanks very much.
All done.
Beautiful.